Good morning, everybody. We have an amazing guest here with us today, and I'll tell you a little bit about her, but I'll also tell you that we did have her previously on our podcast. Her name is Angela Duncan, and I'll introduce her in a second. But what's interesting is we had such an amazing conversation with Angela, and unfortunately, it didn't make it to air. We were never able to post that episode because that day was all the stars aligned against us. It was the craziest day. The episode disappeared from my computer. I lost all my files on my computer that day. And my wallet was stolen the same day. It was like a perfect storm of the weirdest coincidences. And we were talking about money. So it's really odd because like my money was stolen that day. So we can get into that because that probably is no coincidence. But let me tell you a little bit about our guest. So it's my personal friend, Angela Duncan. She is actually a survivor of childhood abuse and poverty. Angela was raised in Section 8 housing and welfare, and right now she has 25 years of personal finance study. She embarked on diverse career in banking, financial advising, owning a top 10 Remax office for 5 straight years with over 2 billions in sales. That's a lot.
Yes,
And
girl.
establish
Yeah.
and
Celebrating.
establishing and selling her insurance agency. And currently now Angela is committed to closing the poverty gap by empowering others to change their financial future. So welcome back again, Angela. We're so happy to have you again.
Yeah, I'm ready to do this conversation take two.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was good.
I'm really so happy to see you too. I could have just kept talking, might have been talking to you when you weren't even in the room for the last month because so last time you shared this morning moment that you do, and I started to do it, and it's made a huge difference in my life. And I'm going to start by saying I cracked up because I'm like, duh, of course, duh. But then I was like, well, if it's so duh, you should do it. And you had said, take a time in the morning and write 5 things that you're grateful for and your goals, like really get in touch with your goals. And I thought this is why I was like, oh, of course. And so for me, the 5 gratitudes were easy. Like it was easy to get them out. But I started to see how my goals were murky because when you have to write them out, you start to be like, when you're writing, if you're sure about it, you write it. But when I was like, oh, is it this number or is it that? Like I just started to, but I will tell you that the process of doing that in the morning, it's not, I'm not going to say unbelievable because it's believable, but it is like epically momentum generating.
Hmm.
And in ways of not just money, but the clarity and the synchronicities that start to come and the training of your brain that like when I'm not in that 2 minutes, like I find myself like I'm cooking and I'm like back to your what you wrote this morning and having it the switcheroo be very easy. So I wanted to start by like sharing that you made such a significant difference in my world because I did that. And so could we start off by you sharing with our listeners the genesis of why you were doing that in your own life and why you were inspired to share it with us and anybody really who's in your programs or who you work with, but also doing it in your own life because you do it every day. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was struggling starting my day, and I personally struggle with being positive and having that positive mindset. So I thought, like, how do I change this for myself? And for me, I needed to start my day, and I needed to have control of the start of my day. And so having a gratitude journal and starting the day with just writing down 5 of my top goals that I'm working on right now, but also writing what I'm grateful for. It helps my mind just start in a positive manner. And being grateful in life really just helps start that day because there's so much around us that we could be grateful for, but we don't always pay attention to it. So when we're intentional with those goals and intentional with the gratitude, it helps you align your values with your goals and just approach the day, approach other people, approach your projects in such a positive and grateful manner that I feel like you get a lot more done, and it helps you stay focused because now you're writing those down so that you're intentional with your time for the rest of the day.
Love it. And then you mentioned that you had at the beginning, hard time staying positive. So you implemented this strategy. I'm just curious, maybe you can take us a little bit back and tell us your story. Why were you not positive to start with? Was it something from your childhood or a story you were carrying with you? What was it?
Yeah, I do believe it comes from my childhood. I came from a very intense and negative environment, and it wasn't something that was fulfilling. It wasn't positive. It wasn't a parental household that is encouraging you to do things. And so, starting off with that, you carry that into your adulthood, whether you think you are or you're not. It does that. An early environment really shapes who you are as an adult. And so, I have to be intentional to make the changes. Then I have to be intentional with what I'm doing with my time as well, because I want to control what comes into the brain so that the output is much more positive. And I love living in positivity. Like, people
Mhm.
want to be around you, they want to be part of what you're doing, they listen to what you're teaching. And that's the best way for us to impact others, is to be that positive person. But I had to start with me first.
I love
I
that.
love it. I remember something that I was very touched by too is that I feel like in your presence, none of my excuses can exist because of the sort of the upbringing that you had. Like, you have every reason, quote unquote, to be mean, to give up, to let that situation control you, to define who you are as a victim, but you don't. And I think, again, like 99%, I'm not, but the thing that exercise did was flip that switch on that little bit that's there that actually is quite impactful. That small amount of anything, like, oh, like, just complaints,
Mhm.
even it's
Mhm.
not possible in your existence. So
Mhm.
what I would love to know too is, like, how did you make that switch? Like, how did you, okay, so the one is this exercise, but what is this, like, aha moment, or like the moment you said, this thing is not going to define my days and who I am? Or maybe it was a series of moments. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I would say it's a series. And I think most people, when you want to make change, you reach a point where you're like, I'm sick and tired of this.
Yeah.
How do I change? You have to get to that moment. So for me, being a mother and watching my daughter, watching her kind of follow in my footsteps a little bit, and the way that she approaches things, the language she was using, it
Yeah.
just opened my eyes. And I was like, wow, that's what I sound like. I don't want to
Mm.
be that person. So instead of telling her what she's doing wrong, now I've got to change and show her what I feel like is a better way to approach life. So she's watching me. And then I went
Mhm.
through a divorce, and it's very easy to be negative about all the things the other person has done wrong. But really,
Yeah.
you've got to look in the mirror and look at yourself first. I can't fix any of that. I can't change that other person, but I can change me. What can I learn from this? How can I be a better person? And then what do I walk away with, the lessons that I've learned? And so it was a series of events over my lifetime that really got me to make this change. And for me, it's been more recent. It's only been the last couple of years. And I feel like I have met such incredible people like Marta, being
Mm.
able to approach people in a positive way and be giving and just get to know people. If I had approached Marta with a negative attitude, we wouldn't be here right now. It's just not something she wants in her world. So, how do I connect with other people? And I want to be able to share that moment with people, and knowing that this is something you can control and something you can change. It might not be easy, but just little steps every day can make a huge difference.
But you know what I love about what you just said? It's so encouraging to our listeners, probably who may be currently in like a negative vibe, right? Like maybe they don't have that positive mindset. I met you when you were maybe like a year into making these changes, or a year and a half. But when I met you, when you approached me, I thought that's your set personality from childhood. Like I would never be able to think that you ever had a past that was maybe more negative or not as bright. You were very bright. Just a little bit of a story how we met. We went to Grant Cardone Real Estate Summit event together. We didn't go together, but you approached me at the very first day. And I'm like, wow, there's this pretty girl approaching me. And you were such a light and such kindness and love that I felt right away bonded, and I felt safe right away. Because I'm like, okay, you go into these rooms and there's a lot of powerful men. And as a
Mhm.
woman, you feel a little bit like, do I belong here? Am I, you're in VIP section, all these guys are gazillionaires and they have their vibe. And I'm like, what am I going to do here by myself this entire weekend? And then Angela shows up right away and she's, let me just take you around the room and you can get to know all these guys. And at this dinner, we're going to sit next to this guy. At lunch, you're going to sit next to, and she was just this bright light that guided me through the entire event. with this really attitude of she didn't want anything from me. She didn't have anything to gain. She didn't even know who I am or how she can benefit from doing that. It's just the pureness of your heart that's doing it for other people. And that's why it shocks me that you barely just changed that. And to me, I was like, oh no, she must have been like from a really good family. You pull up in your G-Wagon and I'm like, oh, she's just always been wealthy. She lives in Miami. You know what I mean? That's my perception. And it's so beautiful to know when you shared your story with us that that's not your beginnings at all. It's possible for anybody to change. And I would love to know how in the world you come from Section 8 and from negative upbringing potentially to being you right now.
Yeah, early on, like as soon as I could move out of the house and sign my own lease at 18, I knew that I needed to remove myself from that situation. And looking around me, I could see people, they had money and they went on vacations and they weren't stressing. And I was like, how do I get to that level? And just being a very curious person and asking questions, finding people who appear that they have their stuff together and say, what do you know? And what I find is people who are doing great things in the world want to share. And when you connect with those people and you come from a place of contribution, like when we met, I don't want anything from you, but I want to get to know you and see how I can help you too. And if there's something that you can teach me, which you do great with Airbnb and real estate, I know I can learn from you, but I want to come from an open heart. And so that's really been my approach over my entire life when I'm learning, is finding great people doing great things, learning about it, then turning around and sharing that with other people.
Beautiful.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I remember the come from contribution. That was another one from our previous talk where it's just a small, I love this is Nico, switcheroo, mommy, switcheroo. So I love it really is what that is. It's a habit. It's not that like you're on cloud nine all the time. I'm sure that you have moments where you want to punch a wall or whatever it is you do.
We are female, we are emotional people.
Yeah. But the ability to almost be your own boss, where, so that was one of them where I would walk into a room and, okay, what would a woman of contribution do right now? How would she? Because then all of a sudden it's not really about you. So if you have the nerves or don't want to go say hi to somebody, or just even if you're like, oh, she's so much better than me, or comparing, you start to all of that dissolves the second that you say come from contribution. Like it really is it's like a nugget, and in it beautifully simple is what I think it is. But if I didn't talk to you, I wouldn't have made it part of my entry to events. It's really what it was. Like every time I enter a social situation or a situation where I'm going somewhere, I say that I remember you, and I'm like, come from contribution. And it's not because my heart and my values aren't there. It's because I get so caught up in the agenda of my life. Oh, I have to talk to this person. Oh, I have to. And if I can really step back, and then that place of open-heartedness is exactly, you're nailing it. Don't nail your heart. Sorry, that was an unfortunate metaphor, but you're the open heart. Can you tell me more about how you open your heart after some of those intense emotions? Because you're talking now divorce, you're a mom. I'm guessing, even though you've got this great success, it wasn't like smooth sailing the whole way. So how do you keep your heart open?
Yeah, and I still deal with it today. I know it's going to be something that I will work on every day for the rest of my life. And when you go into just what you're doing every day and understanding that about yourself, I still suffer from anxiety. So when I'm in that moment and I pay attention, the anxiety for me feels very heavy in my chest. And instead of focusing on that feeling, I think about my heart, and I think about what can I do in this moment? And then I just remind myself that I struggle. I'm going to struggle, but I don't want to focus on that. How do I help other people? And in those moments when I'm feeling really down, or if I'm having that anxiety, I reach out to other people and I just say, hey, what are you doing right now? What can I help you with? Because it really changes my mindset and my attitude. And it reminds me that I have a purpose, right? I'm on this earth for a reason. And while I may not understand what's in front of me, all I can do is what I can control today. And being able to help other people, that's how I keep myself in this positive mindset. And we all are very busy. I'm fortunate in my life now where I'm an empty nester. My daughter's off to college. I do miss her every day. but I don't
Your
have some of
daughter
those.
is
I know.
awesome.
Can you believe it?
What?
Like
Okay.
she looks
Side
20.
note. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a little bit more free time on my hand, but it wasn't always like that. But
Yeah.
you can find 5 minutes every day and give to
Yeah.
yourself unselfishly and just keep working on it. Whatever it looks like for you, you can make that change, but you got to block the time for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the very first time I learned about if you are really feeling down, help somebody else and it will bring you up is I remember Tony Robbins, maybe, I don't know, 20 years ago. I don't know how many years ago I came across that. And when you implement that, it really works. It takes you out of your own misery and feeling sorry for yourself to give to others, help somebody else. It instantly lifts your spirits. That's how we're built as human beings. I'm not sure why, but the contribution actually has better effect on you maybe than even the person you're giving to, right? So I love that you live this way. And I felt it. I know it's authentic. Like people come on and say whatever they want to say on the podcast or whatnot, but I felt it from the other side. Like I knew your contribution to others is very selfless and it's beautiful. And like I probably would have not connected with anybody to that level at that event, but somehow you created lasting change in my mind. Because just like Ushi, I think about how I could approach other people when I go to events. Because usually I'm just like, oh, I'm here for whatever. And I'm just sitting there. If somebody comes up, great. But I'm like, what if I added value to somebody else? So we think of you when we go to events. That's the kind of difference you made for other people's lives, which is beautiful.
Yeah, not in a creepy way, in a way of inspiration. And I think we keep mentioning it not to make you squirm in your seat, but to really for our listeners that I do this so much where I think I need to hit a home run in order to have the change I want in my life. But it's actually these micro moments and these times every day of different choices that have made the sort of ashes to love trajectory happen where I don't stay in my negativity or my whatever downward spiral. So you've done this thing in your world where now you are empowering women through money, right? Or empowering women around money, which I love because just this morning I saw this quote from Kathleen Cameron around what happens when you give money away. It can be short lived, but if you teach the person how to manifest or take care of and make the money, now you've given them freedom. And I thought, how appropriate that randomly the YouTube algorithm served that up. And here comes Angela Duncan, who teaches that. So, can you share with everyone first the idea, like where did it come from that this is something that we need in this world? And then tell us a bit about what you do with women for women.
Yeah. So I was listening to a podcast actually this morning, Sharon Lecter, who was also the partner with the Rich Dad Poor Dad and how that all started. And she said, we really focus on not necessarily the paycheck, but what you do with the paycheck. And I'm a big believer in that. Sometimes you can't immediately control the money that's coming in, but you can control the expenses. I do believe that credit card debt in this country is out of control. And it's one of the few things that we can fix, right? I may not be able to fix cancer or any other crazy deadly disease that I have no knowledge about. But when it comes to money, it can be a simple tool that you're going to use for your everyday life. And if you weren't taught how to use it properly, then it's not too late. I'm a prime example of that, right? I didn't learn about money as a kid, but I decided to be intentional about it, just like we're intentional with the start of our day. You want to be intentional about money. And so the first step is always looking at your expenses and controlling what is it that you can cut out right now in your life that's not serving you. If it's not a basic need and you truly want to get out of credit card debt, then figure out what you need to cut out immediately to propel you forward to really start on that journey. And so we talk a lot about mindset, but it's also being intentional and looking at what's your income, what are your expenses, what are your goals, and then having someone in your life that you can be accountable with and that will be your cheerleader, or they might pick you up when you're feeling down. An unexpected expense comes up and you feel devastated because it's setting you back in your plan. Life happens and it's okay. It's what you do after that point that means the most.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is that what your book is about? I know you wrote a book. So Angela is also an author, and I know it's a bestseller, right? So is that what you teach in your book?
Yeah, it's called Empower Your Money. I wanted to make a book about you And I wanted to give you just simple action items that you can do right away in your life. You don't need a dictionary to read the book. It's a simple book so that you can start on your journey. So many times we see these great financial books. And even today, when I read things, I'm like, man, the average person has no idea what you're talking about. So this is not going to help them, right? So I wanted to reach those people that were struggling and they were tired of being where they're at and they wanted to change. And so let's just deliver the information as simple and basic as possible so you can start today and then you work on that journey.
And I love that because you and I are both in real estate and especially multifamily. I have a bookshelf full of multifamily books, and it's written in such language that you fall asleep before you even get to page 3. And I read it, but I'm like, I'm not retaining this information because it's written by men most of the time. And it's in a language that is way over my head. I don't want to really remember these words even. So I love that what you're doing is, first of all, from female perspective, it's a little bit different. And secondary, like you actually want these changes to stick. And you want people to learn whatever you're teaching them and implement. If they don't understand the vocabulary, if they don't understand what they're reading, they're not going to implement. They're going to gloss over it. And it will be just one of the books on the shelf, like 100 of mine multifamily books.
I know. You just said cut out what's not necessary. And the first thing I thought of was this financial investing app that I have that I never open. So I'm like, oh, same thing, gloss over. Is there a reason you chose money
For the book,
for the place to empower women?
I don't think that I chose it. I've been studying it for a long time. I'm a Christian woman, and I believe that God gives us all gifts. And it just makes sense to me. Numbers make sense to me. Investing makes sense to me. And the more that I talk about it, the more that I realize it doesn't for other people. And so when you get people start asking you about a topic, then that's usually where your genius is. And then you got to realize that's your gift and it's your responsibility to share that with other people because it makes sense to me. How do I make it so it makes sense for other people too? And that's where the teaching comes from.
Beautiful. Marta, I'm going to interrupt you because now I need to go here. So you're a woman of faith, and I want to understand and also you, Marta, how do you define divine providence? Because no, let me just start there and then I can go explain where this question's coming from because I think I can
Oh,
feel
no, I want to hear where it's coming from.
a relationship with the divine that's you're going to please give it to me, please give it to me, please give it to me. Praying in a way and learning again with my switcheroo that for me, praying started to be more praising the evidence of and the presence of the divine. But for a long time, I was like, hey, guy in the sky. And it wasn't obviously that overt. It was more that I could see that my attitude was like, yeah, like almost something outside of me was going to give it to me. And when I hear the word empower, I literally think I think you use that because it's coming from the inside out. So that's what I wanted to hear from you. That's a very intentional choice to empower your money.
Yeah.
It's not, I said empower women through money, but you said, no, it's empower your money. And I love language. And it made me think of, ooh, how does she view like, how do you view all of that? So that's where it's coming from.
Gotcha. Yeah. When I pray, I don't ask for. I think that's a big shift. When I pray, I ask how or show me. And so instead of asking, like in a situation, someone's car broke down and they're praying to God for money to fix it. Instead, I ask, what lesson am I to learn during this time period? And so I remove the emotion part of money and ask more about what I'm supposed to be doing in this moment. Show me the way, empower me with the information and the knowledge so that I can move forward and not feel so emotionally attached, especially in a negative manner when it comes to money. I believe that we are provided for. And and similar to you guys, like I read a lot and I listen to a lot of podcasts. And I remember listening to a podcast recently where they were talking about all these coaches that teach you to have confidence in yourself and to empower yourself. And I believe that to a certain extent, but all of my confidence and belief goes into God first because He's not going to let me down. Whereas I am an imperfect person and I'm going to make mistakes. And so I have to have grace for myself. And that goes back to my prayers where I'm not being negative about myself or beating myself up because something didn't happen the way that I want to. I just reflect on it and say, what am I supposed to learn in this moment so that when I move forward, I don't make these mistakes again. And hopefully I can help someone else along the way not make the mistakes that I've done.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I think we're all thinking about prayer a little bit differently. And I also feel like to me, I evolve. As I evolve, my prayer changes. Because as a child, you treat God like Santa Claus. Give me this, give me that. Here's my list. And then eventually, which I think I told you that, Ushi, once, and you said, yes, it is. God is like Santa Claus. Didn't you say that at some point?
Yeah. Yeah. From the
I-
perspective of what Angela just shared, that the faith that God will come through is like Santa
Yes.
Claus, right? As the kid, you're like, Santa Claus is coming.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and that's a really good and empowering way to view it, because then you also have trust. It will happen, maybe not this Christmas, but next Christmas it's coming. Um, I think I also am starting to learn that sometimes when I don't get what have on my Christmas list, it's for my best interest, right? Sometimes we're meant to go through challenges or different lessons before you get the Christmas wish, because we need to continue to grow and develop. And just because God said not today doesn't mean not ever. It just means you're not there yet to be able to accept the gift that I would give you, right? Good example is, for example, like recently my dog was very sick, and I just remember thinking, I don't want this. No, I'm not accepting this, God. Like, I don't want my dog to die. She is too young. There's no reason. But then I thought, you know what? If that's your plan, I'm accepting it. It's painful and I don't want it. And I'm accepting it because there must be a reason. There's definitely a reason. And now that she's passed last week, I see the clearance, and I don't even know what happened with that, but I feel relief in some way. And I know it's not the end yet. I don't know where the path is leading, but I know it happened for a reason. And I think that's how my prayer has changed over the years, is that don't just wish for that. And if you don't get it, throw a fit, but understand there is a reason behind this, and maybe next year or maybe never, because it's better for you to never get that, right? So that's where I stand in that. But we all have different life stories and different perception of what God is and how He grants wishes.
Yeah. I like to reach some of our listeners who might be in the dark night of their soul. And I really loved how you shared, because I asked you what happens with financial devastation. And so sometimes that might look like a really hard divorce. And sometimes for me, it's looked like really hard separations from business partners. And I was looking back in preparation for speaking with you today about, wow, I did turn that situation around, and it was an ashes to love situation. How did I get the love back? I was like, how did I get it back? And it really is, there's love. It's partly this. Thank you, God, for this experience, which I drew to myself also. And then there's this grace that broke through something that was essentially, how I see it, was like limiting the way my gifts could come through me. And I needed to make that switcheroo. And the question I have for you is, I there's no way, based on your story, that you didn't have these moments where you're like, I feel rock bottom right now. So in those moments, can you talk us through whatever you remember about the way you lifted yourself up?
Yeah, so it depends on the situation. It usually starts with me alone time. Like, I need time to just think and to process. That's just the way that I work through things. And when I have that silence and I sit through that silence, that's when, for me, my breakthroughs come through. It's when I learn the most about myself in that situation and understand that. And I go back to the word control. And I do think this comes from my childhood because I had no control over what was happening to me. But understanding that I am going to grow through this and that my story is not finished yet. And I really have to have that positive self-talk with me. And then I reach out and I ask for help. And it could be a friend, could be a mentor, it could be me helping somebody else. But that first stage for me is that sitting in silence and just allowing myself to move through that pain. Because when you don't deal with it, it's going to come back and it usually comes back much bigger.
Mm.
And so if you don't deal with it in that moment and allow yourself that time, like that time out, I can't get through that. And I've been through that dark quite a bit in my life with a lot of the changes that I've been through, growing as a person, understanding more about myself. Even today, I still have those dark moments. They're shorter because I don't want to sit in it too long. But that first part for me is that sitting in silence so that I can understand and hear myself and grow through it so that I can move through the pain to whatever is next and on the other side.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think, and I don't know if this is last conversation we had, you had another great tool, and I'm not sure if you use that little tool in those moments of darkness, but the tool you shared with us is like a little knob that you turn down. And to me, this was huge because we all have that negative voice, right? And in the moments of darkness, which all of us have, it's a human experience we're all going through. In that moment, I think it's very important to use the tool. Tell us a little bit about the tool, how you're implementing it, because it's worked really well for me. So
Yeah, this one's backfired on me recently because
oh,
it depends on who you're talking to, because not everyone understands. Think about a TV in front of you, right? Or like a radio, and you use that knob to turn the volume up and down. Not the younger generation has no idea what I'm talking about. So what we're talking about in this moment is when you're feeling in that dark spot or you're having those negative thoughts, to close your eyes and envision a knob, whatever knob can look like for you, and turn the volume down on that negativity, turn the volume down on that darkness, on those thoughts, on those words, turn the volume down. And then I clap because I need something to snap me out of that moment.
ah,
And then I take the knob and I turn the volume back up on the positivity piece, on the self-talk that's positive, on those better thoughts. And so it's like a 3-step process of turning it down, clapping myself out of that moment, which makes me laugh most times, and then turning the volume up because I've got to switch that attitude. And I have to do something physically for me sometimes to get out of that darkness.
So good. I'm going to be clapping all over the house.
love it. But you know what? Because I think a lot of us, I used to think that your thoughts, you can't control your thoughts. And a few years ago, I started slightly controlling it, but it really helped me with your knob because thoughts are repetitive. I don't remember the statistics on how many of the same exact thoughts you have. If you guys remember, let me know. But it is repetitive thoughts that continue to come to you. And you think that's just my brain. I can't do anything about it. And when you implement the strategy that Angela is talking about and you turn it down, let's say you say, I'm not good enough, I'm too fat, I'm whatever it is, turn it down. And all of a sudden it goes away. And I'm like, wow. And at some point, it's just not as prominent. It's not that you're ever going to get rid of it completely, but it's not going to be front of your mind, stopping you from doing your life the way you want to do your life, right?
Yeah. And what I found out with that tool too is that like the awareness, like between that and then gratitude, the awareness of how I think I'm a positive person. I really am, like, I'm Ushi, I'm positive. And this sort of heightened self-awareness around some of these disempowering thoughts, especially when it happens, is when you start comparing yourself to other people. I'm good. At my house, I'm like, yeah, girl, like I love myself. I'm celebrating myself. And then the minute I go to an event where there's like all these powerful women, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, oh, I gotta do this. I gotta do that. And immediately I'm like, even you saying you gotta do something is diminishing yourself. What happens? Like, come from contribution. Here are the gifts I have to give. And that's it. So I really love that's the case. And I wonder, could you also share with us? Mara and I are like, blah, blah, blah. These are how amazing these are. But what are some of the things that you're seeing in your work with women that they are turning around using the tools that you are offering, just to give us a variety of what maybe even some of the listeners might not understand as the symptom of what you're giving the antidote to?
Yeah.
Is it antidote or it's antidote? Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I see most often, especially with female business owners, is their ability to separate the confidence from the worthiness and turning that worthy button up. And I see this most often when they're not being profitable in their business because they're not charging enough. They know their stuff. They've been in this field forever, but they don't have that value or that confidence necessarily in, am I worthy enough to charge more? And so I think that has been a huge breakthrough for a lot of people. Is I say, just test the market. The next person that comes to you and wants your service or whatever it is that you're offering, up that price and let's just test it. Let's see what people say. And when they see the yeses come through and they're starting to create more profit for their company, it's not just about them in the moment because they know that they can give, they know that they can deliver on what they're promising for their services. But someone saying yes to a higher value builds their confidence. And now they can turn that volume up even louder because the more money that they're making for their business, the more they can impact other people, whether it's their own family, their own financial goals, charity, church, whatever's important to them. They understand that tool that they're using called money is now something they can share with other people. And I love seeing that because then they're like, oh, wow, I can charge more. Yes. Just make sure you're delivering on what your value, your promise.
It's such a big difference between men and women, and especially when we go to these real estate events, and you almost have to turn down the volume on some of these men because they have so much confidence. It's over, like it's flooding this whole room. And then for women, we're like, oh, I don't know if I'm worthy. And it's quite interesting to see that because sometimes we have an even better value product or whatnot than a guy, but the guy goes in with his volume all the way up, the neighbors can hear it, and we're slightly just like testing. I wonder where that comes from. Do you see that often in your work that women, for some reason, when it comes to charging or feeling worthy of making the money, somehow we hold ourselves back?
I
And
think
for
it's
men, it's just a natural thing?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's because women, we feel like we want to prove or get the value first and then ask for the money later, where the man is more logical, because that to me is a heart-centered approach, where the man is more logical. This is my price, this is what I'm going to deliver. And it's opposite because they're thinking logically, whereas we're more emotional, where we're going to be, I have to prove it to you first, and then I'm going to ask for money. That doesn't always work.
One thing that helped me with that was to really understand the cost of absence, because if you start to see, for example, the cost of absence of Angela is you're broke, or you'll go through cycles of ups and downs and not understand how to secure your future. That's a huge cost, right? The other side of it is actually probably a small investment, where depending on where you're perceiving it, but it's actually not, it's not a huge investment to get the outcome that's going to be there. But even with that logic, I still find myself like, when you just said that, for example, like I say this in my work, okay? And I'm going through this right now because I'm like, oh my God, I don't have, it's like a good thing that's happening in my world. There's so many people that want to work with me. And I'm like, oh, but if I raise my rates, then those people won't, the ones that I love won't be able to work with me. It's like, because even now it's still here. Like, it's like, why? And I think I love that you paired it with, am I worthy? But I also see that what I see in my work is that we want to make it affordable for the whole world, like affordability, access. And it's because we're coming from that space of wanting to help. But you had said something very interesting about your own self, because you had no money at 18. You had no money. You did something about it. You got mentors. Where did you get the money to invest in these things? What was that attitude switch that you had? I'll tell it to you, but I know that it's coming from your voice is so beautiful. So there was something you said that I remembered very distinctly. Do you remember what you said to me?
I don't, but I want to touch real quick because you mentioned word track, cost of absence. So when we as women, as mothers are running our businesses, that cost of absence, the first thought that came to my mind is if I'm giving an hour to a client, I'm taking it away from my family. So think about that. When you're charging what you think you want to charge, how much is it worth for you to take that hour away from your children? So you've got to understand that you are worth more. So charge more. You might lose some clients. That's okay. But now you got some time left to either help other clients or give back to your family. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what I said about the mentorship. Early on, I didn't have money for mentors. I just went and asked other women who were doing amazing things and said, teach me.
Yes. You also said, though, that if I knew I needed the knowledge and there was a price tag to it, I found the money. Like I figured out how to find it. Maybe you didn't do the program the next day, but people who want to change find the money to make the change.
Or we learn how to barter because we may have something that they want or a connection that they need. And while I may not have the dollars for the mentorship, what can I add value to their life?
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that because I do see this like this kind of, I'm going to say the word bleeding heart, but like this, I think I've gotten ensnared in the bleeding heart mentality where you do want to help everybody. But from what you're saying is that I actually become more able to help people when I have this perspective. When I charge more, I'm actually helping more people because
Yeah.
I'm circulating the money. It's coming to me. I'm giving it to my family. I'm using it to support me to do more of what I would like to do in the world and share my gifts, right? It expands my ability to do that. It's just it's a volume thing for sure. Which one will you pay attention to?
Yeah, and what you just said about cost of not being with my child, that resonated with me like nothing else. Literally, like when you said the volume last time, I knew it's going to change my life. And when you just said what you said about cost of not being with your family, because otherwise I feel like women, we're nurturers. We want to nurture everybody, not just our children, but everybody, right? All of our friends, they need our time, and all of our clients. But when you said, how much does it cost you to be away from your daughter? I'm like, oh, a lot. So I'm like, okay, I see
Yeah.
it now. That's hitting me very different, which a man would never think that. They're just, and we have to understand that there are differences between men and women and how we built and what we're created to do, which we carry children and nurture. So even if you're not a mother, you still have that instinct in you, and it's just running the show. So when you put it the way you put it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's going to help so many women, I think, raise their prices.
Yes, and these are all tools that don't cost any money. So it's just you have to take action and implement.
Yeah, it's a perception. Everything is a perception, like how you see the world and yourself, and adjust according.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm like astonished at how every time we do this, I have to just rehear the things that come up. It's like really sinking in. Because then considering like the highest form of self-love, I think that's what you just decoded, right? If I truly were to say, Ushi, I love you, then these actions are almost easy to implement because when it's towards my child, of course, it's an of course. But when you both just said what you said, I'm like, oh, it's an of course. I love me. It's an of course that I would consider life this way or think about raising my prices or look at what would best support me to give my gift. That's okay, Ushi, to think like that.
mhm.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. So, Angela, tell us a little bit more what you're currently working on, because I know you do so many different things, including real estate, writing books. There's a new position I think you took recently, right? Tell us a little bit more about that and how women can work with you or how can benefit from being in your presence and invest their money with you.
Yeah, I sold my last company February of last year.
Oh,
And,
congrats.
we mentioned earlier about sitting in silence, and that's what I was hearing from God. I'm like, okay, I sold this company. Let's go. What am I going to do next? And just kept hearing him say, it's not your time. And so I launched a podcast, wrote a book teaching people about money. And I recently partnered with a company called Drive Planning, and they have the opportunity for people to bring their money to the funds, and we create certainty. And what that means is when you bring money to Drive Planning and become part of my clients, we're going to tell you exactly how much you're going to make. It's like walking into a bank and getting a CD. The bank tells you the term and they tell you the interest rate they're going to pay you. We do exactly the same. So a lot of women, when they invest, they don't like the feeling of uncertainty or they don't know what they don't know. So this is a great opportunity for me to teach, but also to help create income and real wealth for my clients. And I'm really passionate about teaching. And now I've got an avenue. It's like watching The Secret, where they're like, oh, go out and get abundance. And you're thinking, okay, how?
Yeah.
Well, now I can teach, and now I have the how too. So I'm excited for the partnership. I know it's going to be a great value for a lot of people that I work with, but I still teach, I still coach, and I still speak at events because this is my platform. As many people as I can impact and change their lives about money, then that's my purpose. I'm serving in my purpose.
It's
I love that.
amazing. I want to give you a chance to role play with me because I want every woman on the planet to have what you just said, right? But then our own objections and resistance come in the way. So I want you to speak to that because if you're sitting there right now and your resistance and objection is in your face, we have this wonderful opportunity where Angela's going to talk to it for us right now. So, what are some of the common, you're probably so well versed at seeing it. Like when women come to you, they're like, oh, yeah, I want to work with you, Angela. And then all of a sudden the like doubt creeps in, or what's creeping in for most women, and talk to that whatever, the gremlin that's saying no to something that they actually in their heart want to say yes to.
Yeah. So role play is sitting down and saying, what's important to you?
Mm-hmm.
Is this your business? Is this your family? Is it future goals? Maybe you want to get out of debt. Maybe you want to buy a house. Maybe you want to travel. And let's just sit in that moment and let's write that down. I want you to visually think about what it is that your own goals are. And the exercise I like to do is for someone to close their eyes and imagine as if it already happened. What do you feel like in that moment? Who is there with you in that moment? What does it look like? And just have that person talk to me about it. And when we have that end in mind, we can walk backwards to today and figure out what are the steps that we need to do and implement right now so that we can help you get there quicker. And when you have that self-doubt, recognize that's normal. We have this sensation in us that says fight or flight, right? When something doesn't feel right, when we're nervous, when we don't understand something, our body's going to tell us no. Recognize that's going to happen. It's okay. And now let's talk about actual steps to move you forward. And each time you get into that moment where you're feeling scared and nervous and don't want to move, you have to recognize it first before you can move forward, because you can't just roll right past it because it's going to get bigger. And coming back to the emotion piece of what is it that you really want in this life? What do you want to accomplish? How do we get there? And when we have a plan and we can execute it, that's something you can control. It's just so exciting to just watch people go through this process.
Yeah, it's amazing. And for people who are still grasping, like, why do I come see someone like you?
Yeah. When you don't know something or you need help, you're going to go find someone, right? If I have to have heart surgery, I'm going to go find a heart doctor. And finding a partner, a mentor, a coach in your life to help you get to where you need to go, because they're just there to teach you and to be your cheerleader or pick you up when you need to. Find an expert and don't be afraid to ask questions about them. Show me how you are an expert. I'm an open book. I will show you my failures. I will show you what I've accomplished. And if I'm not the right fit for you, that's okay. If you just want to ask some questions, I'm still here to help. But making sure that you're aligning with someone who has similar values to you is important as well.
Yeah. And yeah, I was just going to say though, and specifically because of what I want to get out of debt, because I have a financial goal, because I have no idea about finances, all scenarios are cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I love that what you do is specifically for a lot of women, we leave investing up to husbands or guys or men. So a lot of women, maybe you're start of the road, maybe you just got a great job and you have some extra money and you don't know what to do. A lot of women really don't know. They rely on men to take care of that aspect. Maybe somebody's going through a divorce and all of a sudden they're like, I never had to manage my money. I love that that's what you do, and you can guide women to feel empowered with their money, which is the name of your book and everything you do. And I think that's what's so beautiful. If somebody's listening and you don't really know, you feel like I'm not capable. What do us women usually do? We go to a financial advisor who is a guy, has a very different perception, really, for the most part, of how money should be invested. And then we just say, I hope it works out. That's how it is. Or you leave it up to a husband or somebody in your family, an uncle or grandpa. But I love that you feel empowered about money. You know how money can multiply. And a woman coming with you will feel safe because you're also a woman. You've also been through a lot of things in your life financially. And you can depend that you understand the game, right? And I love that women can come to you, turn to you and say, hey, I'm at the beginning of my journey. How do I invest? How do I get started? It's just amazing.
Yeah. And even for the women that are married too, when you think about statistically, half of the marriages end in divorce. And one of the biggest reasons is because of money. So why not have that conversation with your husband? Maybe you are not the lead when it comes to your whole financial, picture, but have a conversation, understand where your money is at. Because for the husbands that might be listening, the more you can talk about money with your wife, the more on board she's going to be with you. And maybe you guys set goals together. Like that brings you closer. Then hopefully that's not a reason you divorce later, because she may not understand spending habits. She may not understand investing. So if you sit down together and go over what your beliefs are and what some of your goals are, and you guys can plan together, that just is going to help your marriage succeed.
Oh, beautiful. If you can believe it, we're already at our hour. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope to keep having you back. And I so much appreciate your generosity of spirit. And any last words before we sign off for today that you'd like to share?
Women, take control. Get the education that you need, but take action too. That's the most important part. You can learn all you want every day of your life, but if you don't take action, then you're not going to have real change in your life.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Can you also share your Instagram handle or how people can reach you and get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Instagram and TikTok is Empower Her Money. And my website, if you want to know more about how we help people to create massive income, is morewithangela.com.
Beautiful.
Great. And thank you. And for our listeners, if you want to find anything about Angela, because you didn't catch that, it will be posted at the Ashes to Love podcast on Instagram. So we'll see you next time. And thank you so much for tuning in and listening up. And Angela, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Angela. Such a pleasure to have you on again. We'll have you more, of course.
And thank you for listening to Empower Her Money podcast. I am grateful for you. Please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, like this podcast, share it, subscribe, and let's keep teaching others how to take control and be empowered with their finances.